Hello, in this video for the Network Plus certification exam, we are going to be going over Domain 1, Section 2, the network topologies and network types. The network topologies that you will need to know for the exam are mesh, star, otherwise known as hub and spoke, bus, ring, and hybrid. The mesh network type is where devices are interconnected to one another. There are two different types of this, which is a full and a partial mesh. The full mesh is when each computer in the network has a connection to one another. Partial is only when some of the computers have connections to one another. Some advantages of this network type is that it can handle high amounts of traffic. If one of the devices breaks, then it will not actually fail the whole network itself, and adding additional devices will not disrupt transmission between the other devices. Some disadvantages of this network type is that it will most likely be less efficient because of the high chance of redundant connections. It also has a higher cost to implement than other network types, and it is also difficult and time-consuming in order to build and maintain this. Here's a diagram of the two different types of mesh networks. On the left is a full mesh showing all stations connected to one another, and on the right is a partial mesh showing that each station has a connection to some, if not most, of the other computers on the network. The star network type is where every node on the network connects to a central network device. The advantages of this network type is that you really only have to manage that central network device. It is easy to add another device to the network by simply connecting it to that central network device. And if one computer on the network fails, then the rest of the network will still function as normal. Some disadvantages to this network type is that it does have a potential higher cost to implement depending upon what central network device you go with. That central network device also determines the performance and the scalability of the network, and it is also the single point of failure, so if that network device goes down, then the whole network will then come down with it. Here's a diagram of the star network type showing that all of these stations are connected to the central network device, which is the switch. The bus network type is when there is one backbone or common cable and all of the devices on the network are connected to it. The advantages to this network type is that it works well when you have a very small network. It is the easiest topology for connecting in a linear fashion, and it requires less cable length than a star topology. Some disadvantages to this network type are that it is difficult to troubleshoot if there are any issues with the network or devices. It is not scalable, and adding devices to this will slow down the overall network. And if that main backbone cable is damaged in any way, then the network could fail or split in half. Here's a diagram of the bus network type showing that main cable going across the middle and all of the stations connected to it. The ring network type is where all of the devices on the network are connected in a way that creates a circular data path, and each device is only connected to two others, one in front of it and one behind it. Some advantages of this network type is that all the data flows in one direction, which will reduce the packet collisions. The data can be transferred at high speed between workstations, and any additional workstations can be added without impacting performance of the network. Some disadvantages of this network type, though, is that any data sent from the source must pass through every workstation as it goes to the destination. The entire network is also impacted if one of the workstations fails, and the hardware needed to connect each workstation to each other is more expensive than hubs and switches. Here's a simple diagram of the ring network type showing each workstation connected to the one in front of it and one behind it, and each connection together forms a circular data path. The hybrid network type is very simple. It is simply when you take two or more of the previous network types or network topologies and you combine them together. So for instance, in this diagram, you will see a ring network on the left connected with a star network on the right. So now that we covered the network topologies, let's go over the different network types. The peer-to-peer network is where two or more computers connect directly to each other and share resources without requiring a separate server or any other server software. You can think of this as similar to a mesh topology. The client-server model has a dedicated computer that stores data and resources and controls other computers' access to them. This can also be referenced as one-to-many. Local area network, or LAN, is where multiple computers are linked together to form a network within a limited area. A metropolitan area network, MAN, is a computer network that interconnects users within a metropolitan area, such as a city or town. So this is larger than a LAN, but smaller than a WAN. So the references you can go with is small LAN, medium MAN, and large WAN. WAN is the wide area network, and that's a network that can span over a large geographic area and interconnects multiple LANs and MANs within it. A wireless local area network, WLAN, is a LAN that uses wireless communication instead of wired connections, which is your typical Wi-Fi at your house. Personal area network, PAN, and this connects devices within a user's immediate area, and the best reference you can think of when you see PAN is just think of Bluetooth. Campus area network, CAN, interconnects multiple LANs within a limited geographical area, and it is usually used within an educational or corporate campus. Storage area network, SAN, is just a network of storage devices that provide a shared pool of resources of that storage space. Software-defined wide area network, SD-WAN, uses software-defined networking principles in order to manage and optimize a wide area network. Multi-protocol label switching, MPLS, is a routing technique that uses labels rather than an IP address in order to route. Multi-point generic routing encapsulation, MGRE, is a tunneling protocol that allows one-to-many connections, and this is usually used to connect one site to multiple remote sites using a VPN. Demarcation point. This is the physical point where the provider's network transitions into the customer's network. This is also the point where the provider no longer has responsibility over any network issues. SmartJack is a type of NID that provides more capabilities than just a simple connection. It can diagnose issues, it can trigger alerts, as well as have sensors that can monitor and then trigger those alerts. Now that we covered the network topologies and network types, let's look at some virtual network concepts. vSwitch is simply a software application that will act as the switch in between the virtual machines on the host that it is on. Virtual Network Interface Card, VNIC, is the network interface on a virtual machine that will provide connectivity between the virtual OS and the vSwitch, and this is similar to a physical NIC on a physical machine. Network function virtualization is just the concept of replacing physical network devices with their virtual counterparts. And hypervisor is just simply the type of software, firmware, or hardware that will create and run virtual machines. Lastly, we are going to be going over the provider links, satellite, DSL, cable, lease line, and metro optical. The satellite provider link is usually used if a location does not have access to any foundation of cable or fiber connectivity. It uses satellites to transmit the data between the two locations, so this will inherently have higher latency. And the diagram below shows a remote site connecting to the NOC hub over a satellite. Digital Subscriber Line, DSL, provides an internet connection to residential users through their traditional telephone line. A modem is required in order to convert the analog signal into a digital one. There are two different types of DSL, symmetric and asymmetric. Symmetric will provide the same speed for upload and download, and asymmetric does not provide that, but it will provide a much higher download speed. The diagram below contains a simple outline on how DSL will be provided into your home. Cable provides an internet connection to residential users through their existing cable TV network. A cable modem is used in order to connect the service provider network to the home network. The cable modem will use DOCSIS, Data over Cable Service Interface Specification, which is an international telecommunications standard, and it will support speeds up to 10 gigabit per second download and 1 gigabit per second upload. And note that that is gigabit, not gigabyte. The diagram below is a simple outline of how cable internet is provided inside of a home. Lease line is where a portion of the service provider's network is dedicated to a company, usually to provide connectivity between the company's branches or offices. This will be a point-to-point connection between each of those locations, and it is expensive since it requires that the connection will always be available at that dedicated bandwidth, and it will be a separate connection from the usual connections through broadband. A simple way to think of this is that a company is purchasing a part of a network for themselves that other people do not have access to. The diagram below is just a simple picture showing lease line connections between the different buildings. Metro Optical allows an organization to access the service provider for not just internet access but also certain WAN solutions. This provider type specifically goes with fiber optic cables and not Ethernet cables, and that will provide very high network connectivity speed and can span up to several hundred kilometers. This provider typically serves large, concentrated metropolitan areas. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more videos covering the Network Plus certification exam.